Mass Effect Andromeda. Certainly you've seen at least one argument about it so far, because these arguments are happening at such a high rate. There's tons of them. And while some definitely do love the game, most of the appreciation is pretty tepid. But people who hate the game really hate the game. And while people are stating a lot of different reasons for why, you might be surprised to learn many of these people may share a core reason in common. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx we ask the question, why is Mass Effect Andromeda getting so much hate? So, first off, I want to say that I don't care about the political arguments surrounding this game. Honestly, most people don't play games for politics, weirdly enough, and although developers often incorporate political ideas, so does every other artist making any other piece of art ever. Art is about perspective, and part of perspective is politics. And that's just not what I want to talk about, it's way too subjective. And if the game itself was perfect, people probably wouldn't have a lot to say about its politics. Some would, but I promise you it wouldn't be anything like what it is now. The thing is, the problems are not political. Despite what some people will tell you, politics is not what ruined Mass Effect Andromeda, although it did very much ruin the argument about what is wrong with Mass Effect Andromeda. The criticism brought forth by far the most often and that's caught the most traction hasn't been political. What I've seen the most is that it's a buggy game filled with characters that are at the very lowest point in the uncanny valley. And yes, I'm aware the game has been patched, we'll talk about that in just a moment, but before we do, I think it's very important to talk about exactly what it looked like when it came out. In fact, let's not even talk about what it looked like when it came out. Let's talk about that very first trailer where people were like, yeah, the eyes are messed up. Between the time that trailer hit and when the game hit, there was more than a little time to work on the eye shader. But no, instead they opted for a very puppet-like, dead look that pretty much everybody has talked about repeatedly over and over the last month, that there's nothing I could possibly say that adds to it. Although I'll say I agreed with it. It was very much not a good example of what eyes should look like in a video game. And when you're talking about a game that you play as a human who interacts with a lot of other humans, as well as things that look kind of like humans and have similar eyes to humans, the thing that people probably end up looking at the absolute most is the eyes. And yes, I understand that over the years there have been a lot of criticisms about these sexy bodies on Mass Effect characters, but I'm not talking about that. In no way do I think it detracts from the point I'm trying to make. When something goes down, people are talking, and when people are talking, you're making eye contact with them. And like I said, this has been patched, and it's certainly not the only problem. It was a very buggy game with a lot of physics problems, but in a lot of ways it wasn't a lot different than the problems that a lot of video games out there all have as well, which relates much closer to what I want to get at in this video. But first, let's say you had a game that looked super wonky and on top of that had terrible physics bugs. Wouldn't you think a AAA developer would have a team of testers that might have brought up some of those concerns? Well, BioWare certainly does have such a team. They're a subsidiary of Electronic Arts, one of the biggest game companies in the entire world. I'd be willing to stake the Falcon name on the idea that they have the money to hire and have hired a team of such people. Almost every AAA developer has a QA team that's quality assurance, that is, a team that assures quality, and the idea that none of them said anything about the problems in this game is absolutely absurd. There's no chance that these concerns were not raised. There is literally no possible way a QA team ran their standard operating procedures on Andromeda and was like, oh yeah, there's no real problems. No, those concerns were probably raised and then ignored. Mass Effect Andromeda, like almost every AAA game out there, was rushed. And now, not long after, there has been a patch that's been released. And I'll say this, looking at the faces in the patched version of the game is not like looking at the same game. All things considered, the alterations are fairly minor, but they look completely different. The eyes are a very big deal. The fact that they fixed the eyes is actually a very big deal. And I don't want to sit here and say that they've done nothing. They have done something, but there are still a lot of bugs in this game. To call this game complete, even a month later, with its first major patch, it just wouldn't be accurate. I mean, yes, the facial acting is a little bit better in some conversations. Yes, that weird thing that happens whenever Ryder runs in a zigzag is no longer present. Yes, supposedly Ryder can't get stuck in the biotic charge pose anymore. Some collision issues have gotten a little better. But here's the problem. For one, all of the lip sync isn't fixed. It's some of it. In fact, there's still a lot of weirdness in a lot of cinematic scenes. And you can tell from the list of things that are planned changes that there's still a lot of work to do, including actual options and variety in the character creator, improvements to hair and general appearance for characters, quote-unquote ongoing improvements to cinematic scenes and animations, and some more narrative-oriented changes. Is the game as littered with bugs as it was? No, but there are still bugs. You can find videos right now. Check out the bugs since the patch. I mean, some people are even saying it with glee. There are still bugs. A few minutes ago, I mentioned that the game is not complete, and if you want to know what the true problem of Mass Effect Andromeda is, that's it. It's another game that supposedly had a large budget and a long development cycle that was released incomplete. This is a game that got a lot of hype, just like a large number of games get nowadays. Hype has become the biggest part of video game marketing, as it has with almost everything that takes time and money to make. They want people to be as excited as possible for when it comes out, understandably so. But hype has been used to circumvent the idea of reviews. When a company isn't as confident in a game as they should be, when they've spent millions of dollars and hyped it up for months, expecting you to spend 60 of your hard-earned dollars on it, you don't see reviews for it. So you have to basically say, yeah, the hype, I guess. People are excited for this, so I should stay excited for it? But inside you kind of go, oh shit. Mass Effect's review embargo was March 21st, the day before it came out in North America. In other words, the reviews of the game did not figure into your pre-order. Sometimes people go for the pre-order just a few days before because they know that there's more you can get for it. Sometimes it's released a little bit earlier. For instance, people with EA Access or Origin Access were able to play the first 10 hours of the game on the 16th. Anybody who did those pre-orders had not even thought about a review at that point. They bought it, and they downloaded and played it 4 days before any reviews were allowed. And let's be frank, this is a common practice in video games. This is seen all the time in video games. People are calling it pre-order culture, but I wouldn't call it culture at all. Encouraging people to put their money down when the only thing that they have available to them is hype. And this is all building towards what, Falcon? Why are people hating this game so much? What makes it different from other games? Well, like I said, most of the problems inherent in this game are problems that we see every day. Big releases are not released in a complete state, and patches fix all the problems over the coming months. That's not new. Certainly, it's not the first game to have the uncanny valley problem. In fact, not nearly enough games actually manage to get past the uncanny valley, and usually end up doing so with style as opposed to photorealism. And it's certainly not the first game to have a massive amount of hype. And it's far from even close to the first game to have that kind of hype and disappoint. So why did it get people so angry? Well, for a lot of people, Mass Effect, and BioWare for that matter, has just always been above that shit. The reputation of the series and developer is not one of somebody who constantly does this stuff. Pretty much every other BioWare game has its fans, and detractors usually have, once again, political reasons for detracting. But they've always sold very well and gotten great reviews because they've always been pretty high quality games. The problem with Mass Effect Andromeda can be summed up in 2 words. You too, as in you also, as in et tu Brute, even you Brutus. Even you put a knife in my back. If the developers that we trust to make good games can't even get past all the problems that we're having in basically all the games ever, if the pursuit of profit can affect even those that we have deemed to be pure, then why even try? Why even bother with games if the supposed best ones are going to disappoint us this bad? And it's not just AAA devs doing massive series that we're all familiar with. It's also, categorically speaking, some indie devs as well. Indie devs are often considered above a lot of the same types of problems that the so-called AAA studios have, and yet No Man's Sky. It seems like regardless, the profiteering is going to happen at every level. Why bother? Why try? Who cares? And that's what bothers people. It's a reminder that even what they consider to be untouchable is still at the mercy of a greedy developer or publisher or both. And between Mass Effect Andromeda and No Man's Sky, just the backlash that those 2 games experienced alone should be enough for devs to learn their lesson. But there's a lot of games out there like this, and it just keeps happening over and over. And these companies wonder why people are mad? Just before I stop on this point, look at the positive reception for Horizon Zero Dawn, a game that came out looking as though it had work done on it. It had so few bugs that it was basically not noticeable. Hell, it may not actually even have any bugs. I've never encountered a bug in it, and it didn't look weird. I mean, other than things that are inherent in the weird style it has, but it didn't look weird. When a game comes out like that, it just just reminds me how often the games industry fails. And Mass Effect Andromeda is the most recent example, from a beloved developer in a beloved series. I don't know whether you like or dislike Mass Effect Andromeda, either way, we want to hear from you. What was your favorite or least favorite part about the game? We'll meet you in the comments for that. If you enjoyed this video, please click like, and if you're not subscribed, now would be a great time to do just that. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. The best way to see them first is a subscription. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.